All right, so we are in lesson 3. We're talking about plant reproduction. And in lesson 2, we touched a lot on reproduction where we're going over the parts of the plants. So this should be a pretty quick lesson. So we're learning about flowers and trees, how they pollinate, and how they reproduce. So we touched on it already, but pollination is when pollen from the male plant, remember those male parts, the stamen, comes in contact with the ovule of the female plant. Plant is then fertilized and the ovules mature into seeds. So here's a good picture of bees getting that pollen from, looks like a sunflower, and then they'll go to another sunflower and they will drop the pollen down the stigma into the ovary of that plant. So it's spread a lot of different ways. Bees and butterflies are really essential for them. Wind helps pollinate, animals help pollinate, you help pollinate. There's lots of ways. Plants can self-pollinate, so they bring the pollen and ovule into contact within an individual flower. Farmers and breeders intentionally pollinate plants, so that's just as simple as picking the stamen from the flower and collecting the pollen grains, so gathering the pollen just like a bee would, and then taking that pollen to the female flower, and that's how they get all kinds of different genetics and species cross-pollinating these plants. Hybridization, that occurs when two plants of different species or genetic variations cross-pollinate with one another. So when the plants are different species, it's interspecies hybridization. So that is just when two different plants are going to pollinate with one another. And typically scientists are going to do this on purpose. So why would we do this? Because it says when two genetically divergent plants cross-pollinate, it's called intraspecies hybridization. And hybrid plants may be fertile, partially fertile, or they can become sterile. So it's really rare, but humans do it a lot. They do controlled breeding. Why would they do this? Have you ever seen like those the fancy tulips that come in more than one color with the fancy ruffled leaves? They've got roses that are rainbow now. Yeah, rainbow roses, black roses. That's not natural. All this is coming from the hybridization. All right, so let's go down to the seed. So the seed is very important. That's where it all starts. There's a really good picture of a seed opening up and starting a plant. Okay, so a seed consists of 3 parts. The embryo, which is a tiny miniature plant in a stalled state of development. So it's in that seed, ready to go. The endosperm of the seed is a food source for the growing plant. So it's how that plant is what that embryo is going to eat to survive. Finally, the embryo and endosperm are surrounded by this seed coat, which is what you see, the hard protective layer around that seed that's going to protect those 2 important parts. So the development of the embryo is halted. That seed can remain viable or able to grow for a very long time. So, and this is, I've got seed packets that are, 5-10 years old that I still plan to plant someday, and they're still going to be great. So that's what's really awesome. So when we say they can be viable for a long time, we mean it. So scientists grew an extinct variety of squash from seeds found at an archaeological dig. So these seeds were more than 800 years old, and they were saved by a gardener many years ago for future planting. It doesn't seem like Gardner would think 800 years in the future, but they did. So it's really awesome. And today, they're all over the world, they're seed banks. And these are, in case something happens to the world and we need to start over, we've got every kind of seed known to man there for storage. A lot of them are underground to start back up a society. So kind of scary, kind of cool to think about. So it says the key to storing seeds is to limit their exposure to moisture. If they get wet, mold can grow and you'll kill them. Store them in a cool, dry place, a glass jar in your fridge. Testing, if you have old seeds and you're not sure if they'll germinate, place them in a moist paper towel, cover with plastic, slap it on your window, and see if they start growing roots. I'm sure most of you did the bean plant experiment in kindergarten where you took a bean seed, put it in a Ziploc and wrapped in a wet paper towel, taped that Ziploc to the sun or to the window, and in a week it looks like this. So you do a life chart. The type of seed determines how long they can be kept in storage. So most vegetables can be stored 3 to 4 years, but there are a few that will last 5 years, like cucumbers and collards. So knowing what your seed is and what to expect. So germination, that's an important word. That is when the embryo gets out of that stalled stage and it starts growing again. So germination is basically considered whenever you see this, something green popping out of the soil, that has germinated. And on the back of seed packets, it's going to tell you 7 to 14 days to germination. And so that you should know to expect that. If you don't see your plant coming and it's been 3 weeks, it's probably an old seed and it's not going to work. So the seeds need water. They need temperatures in a good range, not freezing, and suitable amount of sunlight. And all of this comes on the back of your seed packet if you ever start plants from seed. So it talks about growing plants at home. We talked about your bean project. So the seed's going to go through lots of different distinct stages. First, the root emerges, but it's under the planting medium. It's under the soil, so you can't really see it. The first sprouts form the stem, then the leaves of the plant. They don't look anything like the mature plant typically. It's just a little faint seedling. Looks like this. Then, over time, it's going to grow into the plant. So this is why it's really, really important to label your plants, okay? Especially if you're a grower and you're gonna sell these plants. That way you know what you are, because they do all look very similar together. All right. It says, what do you need to grow plants? It depends on the scale. A small home garden, you might just need low-tech hand tools, maybe a tiller. You can do one that you run on by your hands to break up the soil. Larger farms need larger equipment. That's where we have plows. Remember we talked about John Deere. We talked about the evolution of the plow. So those big, huge plows that we have today, those till the soil, and then we have crops planted by machine rather than hand. So big, huge things that come behind tractors, and they put the seeds in them, and the seeds automatically go in the ground. There's combines for crops that are going to get the crops out way faster than doing it by hand. So there's all kinds of things, and technology has really boosted plant reproduction like crazy. All right, so that's lesson 3. We'll see you for lesson 4.